Recording.
Welcome
Recording.
everyone. Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi, 1 week at a time. This is Masechet Sanhedrin, and this is our second class. And today we are going to be reviewing Daf 9 through 15. So we are in the middle of discussing the number of judges that are needed for different activities, different types of court cases, different rabbinic options. So we are going through the Mishnah we read last week, and it had a very long list of things. So now we're going through each item, and we're going to discuss why does each thing need the number of judges that it needs. So we were in the middle of discussing the concept of motzi shem ra. And what we discussed was that a motzi shem ra is a man who gets married, and after the wedding, he comes to court and he says that I married this woman, but when we were together, I realized that she was not a betula, she was not a virgin, and therefore she must have had an affair while we were in the interim, while we were engaged or basically almost married. And if this turns out to be the case, she gets capital punishment because it is seen as adultery, meaning just to go back for a minute, it's not really that they were engaged. They did a rusin, which is one part of getting married, but they didn't do nisuin. Right, nowadays we do both of those things at a Jewish wedding, so as to not get into this problem. I mean, anyway, for other reasons as well. So the Gemara, the Mishnah said we need 3 judges for Motzi Shemra, but another opinion is that we need 23. And the question is, what is the case? Meaning, if it's only a case of penalty and having to pay money, then you need 3. If it's a case of actually a capital case, we will see, and we learned last week, capital cases need 23 judges. So the Gemara, if you remember at the end of last week, we discussed what could be the case where maybe you thought you needed 23, but really you only need 3. So the Gemara says maybe the witnesses warned her that she would get lashes, but not that she would get capital punishment. Therefore, you only need 3 judges as opposed to 23. Or another opinion is no, you need 23. Or maybe there were 2 witnesses, but one of them became invalid. And therefore, you cannot give her capital punishment. Therefore, you might only need 3 judges. Rabbi Kiva says, if a third witness comes to court, now we only need, in general, we only need 2 witnesses. Let's say a third witness came. So then the question is, do they become one group? And therefore, if they become what's called edim zomemin, which I don't know if we've mentioned yet this time around, but edim zomemin are witnesses that get discredited in a very specific way. We're going to learn more about them soon. If they get discredited, so then they get the punishment that they were trying to give to the original the original defendant. So let's say all 3 of them became edim zomemin, all 3 of them get the punishment. So too, right, if you're adding on to a mitzvah, you also get more of a reward, meaning this third person, even though we don't need him, he is seen as part of the group. And if one of the witnesses was invalid, then the whole testimony is thrown out because we view them as a group, right? Even if it's 100 witnesses, we throw out the whole testimony, or only if we're dealing with a capital case. But if we're dealing with just monetary issues, you keep the valid witnesses and you just get rid of the person who is invalid. Or maybe it's for both. Okay. Or another option is one group of witnesses warned her, but another group of witnesses come to court. And there's a machloket if this is valid for a capital case or not. Therefore, 3 might be enough, 3 judges might be enough, or you might need 23. Another option is these edim contradicted each other in the extra questions. We're going to learn that the judges basically question the witnesses, and there's 2 types of questioning. One is called bedika, and one is called chakira. Okay, so bedika is these are like less relevant questions, right? What color was the person, what color's jacket was the person wearing, as opposed to, you know, did the person get killed with a gun or a knife, right? There's more relevant question or basic questions. What day it happened? Who did it? How did they do it? And then like, was it raining outside? Could be maybe a little bit less relevant. Okay, now since we mentioned Edim Zoamim, the Gemara explains that what is Edim Zoamim? So a group of 2 witnesses come, a set of witnesses come, and they say, we saw Bob kill John. And then another set of witnesses come, and they don't say, we saw somebody else kill John, right? They say, wait a minute, Avram and Yitzchak, how could you be witnesses and testify to this case that happened on Monday? On Monday, you were with us at the movie theater, right? The term is imanu hayitem. You, right, Avram and Yitzchak, you were with us. So there's no way you could have seen anything happen, right, in the city, right, in somewhere else, right, because you were with us the whole time. That shows, that's called edim zomamin, right, shows that they are lying, and they get the punishment that they were trying to get the defendant to have to get, right, whether it's monetary, whether it's physical, whatever it is, they get that punishment. Okay, let's go back to Motzi Shemra. Right, so Motzi Shemra, the husband brings witnesses to testify that his newly married wife had an affair. Now, let's say his witnesses become edim zomamin, right, meaning they lied. So then they get killed, right, because they were trying to get the wife killed. So they get killed, but they don't pay there's like a penalty that she would have had to have paid. They don't pay that, right? And this is the concept of, right, kimle midirabamine. We've learned this before. The principle is if a person is liable for 2 types of punishments, one more stringent and one more lenient, you get only the stringent punishment and not the other one, right? So most of the time we see this with great punishment versus a monetary punishment, right? So if the person is going to get killed or get lashes, they don't have to pay the penalty. Okay. However, let's say then the father is the father of the bride, right? So he brings witnesses and they become edim zomamin, right? They get killed and they need to pay. Why? Because they were trying to get the witnesses killed, right? And they were trying to get the husband to pay. Therefore, right, if you're trying to get 2 different punishments to 2 different people, then they have to do both. Meaning, there are 2 options. either the wife gets killed or the husband needs to pay, right, a penalty to compensate the wife for what's it called, like libel, like for right, calling her, right, an adulteress. He needs to pay, so that's the money, right? She doesn't have to pay, he needs to pay, meaning the husband. Okay, let's say Reuven comes to court and says, and says, right, he claims that Shimon sodomized him against his will, right? Sodomy is punishable by death. And if it happens to you, right, against your will, so then you bring the person to court. If another witness comes, they combine, and they get the perpetrator gets killed. But if, right, Reuven says it was consensual, so now we're going to learn that when a person admits something in court, that's not enough to punish him, right? We have this concept that an admission of guilt doesn't count as testimony. So we cannot punish the person who's admitting guilt. Or, right, that's one reason we won't admit his testimony. Another one is that a person is like a relative to himself, right? A karov, a close relative to himself. Therefore, you can't make yourself, right, a rasha, right? Someone who has sinned. And then there's either the option one is we throw out the whole testimony. Option two is that we split the testimony, right? We say that we're going to accept the testimony about the other person, about Shimon, but we don't accept testimony about himself, right? The term in the Gemara is Talginan Dibura, right? We split the person's testimony. We accept testimony about somebody else, but not about himself. Okay, daf number 10 tells us that, let's say a person says, Shimon slept with my wife. Now, if another witness, again, he's one witness. If another witness comes, they can combine to kill the man, but not his wife. And now here again, remember we said a person is seen as a relative to himself. He's also seen as a karov, as a relative, or right, obviously, but really as a relative to his wife. Therefore, he's not allowed to testify against his wife that she had adultery in order to get her punished, but he can testify against the person that she slept with. Okay, let's say, right, okay, so we were talking about sodomy with a person. Now the Gemara talks about like bestiality, right? If someone says that this person sodomized my ox, so then again, is that person seen as a karov, right, as a relative to his possession, right? The ox is his possession. The Gemara says, no, don't go that far, right? To yourself, yes. To your wife, yes. To your possessions, no. And therefore, you will kill the person who did it and the ox. Okay, now we're moving on to lashes. One of the punishments that the court used to give was called makot, which is lashes. And for that, you need 3 judges. And it's based on a verse. Again, counting the number of times it has certain words. And therefore, the Gemara says it's 3 judges. Rabbi Shmuel says, actually, you need 23 judges because it's connected to a capital case. And because it's connected to a capital case, we know that capital punishment needs 23 judges. Therefore, for lashes, you also need 23. Another opinion is that you need 23 judges because lashes sometimes comes instead of getting capital punishment. And therefore, you would still need 23 and not 3, even though, again, our Mishnah says that you only need 3. Since we're talking about lashes, the Gemara describes what happens when a person gets lashes. Some say it's like a type of death, but he has to stay alive, meaning a doctor comes and evaluates the person to see how many lashes that person can withstand. And that's the only number that they're allowed to give. They're not allowed to go too far because we need to make sure that he will survive by the end of the punishment. The Gemara also says that the number needs to be divisible by 3. And again, he must be alive by the end of getting the lashes. And again, therefore, this opinion is that you need 23 judges to get lashes. Okay, next, our Mishnah said that to extend a month, you need 3 judges. What does this mean? So if you know the Jewish month, right, it helps today was Rosh Chodesh, right? The Jewish month can either be 29 days or 30 days. Now, originally, it was by witnesses, right? Witnesses used to look up at the sky to see the new moon, and that's how they would that's how they would set what the month was. But afterwards, they made calculations, and if it's calculations, so then again you need 3 judges. Okay, right? When they extend it, they do it on day 30 or maybe on day 31. And again, if it's on day 31, you need 3 judges, but maybe before that, you do not need 3 judges. Or maybe what we're talking about is you need 3 judges for the calculations, but later on, we're going to speak about making a leap year. Therefore, here we're talking about making a longer month. Okay, so now let's go to leap year. We did month, let's do leap year. A leap year, so there are different opinions. You need either 3, 5, or 7 judges to make a leap year. If you remember, we learned that for a leap year, we are going to add a month of Adar. We are going to discuss why you would make a leap year and how. But first, what the Gemara asks, what do you need? What do you mean you need 3, 5, and 7? So let's say if you have 3 judges, one person says, one says that we should discuss it. 2 people say no. So then so that's the end, right? 1 versus 2. Let's say 2 say let's discuss and 1 says no. So then you add 2 judges and you continue discussing. Let's say 3 say we should do a leap year and 2 say no. So then again we add 2 and now you get 7, and then they discuss between the 7 judges. What's this idea of 3, 5, and 7? The Gemara says that this reminds us of Birkat Kohanim, the blessing of the priests, right? The first line is 3 words, then 5 words, then 7. Another option is the number of guards. There are 3 guards in the Beit Mikdash, in the temple. There are 5 who see to the king, and then there's 7 who also guard the king. So that's like the 3, 5, and the 7. Okay, Daf 11 discusses how we extend the year. You need specific judges, people who are invited to sit and discuss. The Gemara gives a story of Rabban Gamliel who invited 7 judges, but 8 people showed up, and The eighth person is Shimon HaKatan, who came to learn, right? He says, I'm not coming to judge, I just wanted to learn. By the way, Shimon HaKatan is the rabbi who wrote the blessing that was added to Shmona Esrei, the blessing of the Lamalshinim. So that's Shimon HaKatan. And then Rabban Gamliel told him that he could stay, but he can't be part of the discussion because he wasn't really invited. And then in the not parentheses, but I'm saying parenthetically, the Gemara tells us really it wasn't Shimon HaKatan who like crashed the party, but he didn't want to embarrass the person who did crash the party. So he got up and admitted that he did it, but really he didn't. And because of this, the Gemara on Daf 11 goes through stories about rabbis who prevent others from being embarrassed, and goes through different cases of making sure that people won't be embarrassed. This woman came in and she said, one of your students, slept with me, and then the Rabbi Meir says everyone needs to give her a get instead of embarrassing the one person. Or Yoshua also says, right, all of Israel sinned. Actually, God said to Yoshua, all of Israel sinned, even though it was only one person, but he didn't want to embarrass. The same, another story with Moshe, the same idea. Okay, then the Gemara tells us that when Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi die, they are the end of prophecy for the Jewish people. They are the last prophets, and there's no more prophecy. But there is the concept of a bat kol, and we've seen a bat kol in the Gemara before. Bat kol is like a heavenly voice that comes down to tell people maybe what to do or what not to do. And here the Gemara tells us a bat kol came and said Hillel was destined for prophecy, but he couldn't get it because the generation wasn't great enough and couldn't get prophecy. And he was the student of Ezra. The same thing with Shmuel HaKatan. He was the student of Hillel, and he knew that the sages would be killed, and he tells people like small things that seem very prophetic. Okay, let's go back to leap years. The Nasi, the leader of the Jewish people of the time, has to want to extend the year, and only if it's necessary. So now we're going to discuss, when do we make a leap year? So one reason is because the roads and the bridges, you need time to fix them after the winter. Again, we want to make sure that all the pilgrims, all the Olei LaRegel can get to Jerusalem, so the bridges and the roads need to be fixed. Or maybe it's because the ovens need to dry. Again, if you have a rainy winter, Bezrat Hashem, we should have more rain. If you have a rainy winter, most of the times the ovens were outdoors, they were clay, and they needed to dry before Pesach so that they can cook the Korban Pesach in those ovens. Or another reason is the people from Bavel couldn't get to Jerusalem in time, and those are reasons to make a leap year. But the following are not reasons to make meaning you cannot make a leap year because of the following reasons. One, let's say it snowed, that's not a reason. Or if the people from Bavel didn't leave yet, so then that also isn't a reason yet. If the year is early and the goats are too small for sacrifices, or the birds are too young for the sacrifices, again, there's right, in nature, the animals are born, let's say in the spring.
We lost you, Rabbanit, if you can hear us.
We can't hear you. Yomi, can you hear us?
I can hear.
Okay.
Yeah, but the Rabbanit we don't see or hear.
I know. I was just trying to put a little levity in it. Zohar, she can take over that. I don't, just see if Rabbit can reboot herself. She's going to figure out by now we don't have her. There it is. No,
Oh, we can't hear you.
no.
No camera either, right?
Okay, back?
Yes,
You're back. You're
Yes.
back.
No, I
Oh,
can't see you. I cannot see
okay.
you.
we see her on the desktop.
Oh.
Look on the grid setting.
Oh, here she comes. There you are. Hi.
Okay, and we're back. It's a Hanukkah miracle. Okay,
Let's go.
okay. Are we, okay, we're back? Great. Okay, so we were in the middle of talking about making a leap year. So we were discussing that you cannot make a leap year because of if the Gemara says really, but we have a story that Rabban Gamliel to the Galil to say that the birds are too young and the goats are too thin, and therefore we should make a leap year. So the Gemara says, let's see, we can extend the year for 3 reasons. If the grain isn't ripe yet, again, remember we need grain for Pesach. If the fruits won't ripen by Shavuot, and if Pesach won't be at the right time of year. And you need at least you need 2 out of 3 of those reasons. Okay, then the Gemara tells us that there are 3 regions in Israel, Yehuda, right? The Ever HaYarden, the side of the Jordan, and the Galil, the Galilee. And it's based on 2 out of the 3 regions that we want to make sure that there's grain in some of these regions by Pesach. Okay, one option is that the court has to extend the year from Judea, from Yehuda, or they can also do it from the Galil, and you can only extend the year during the day, and the same thing with making it a new month. All of those things have to be done during the day. Dov 12 tells us that we don't extend the year when there's a famine, because again, we want to make sure that if you extend the year, it's longer that you can't eat the new grain, and that is a problem. This is based on a verse with Elisha. You also can't make a leap year before Rosh Hashanah, right? We're afraid that people are going to forget by the time you get to Adar, they're going to forget. But if it's extenuating circumstances, you can. But again, you can only add an Adar. You're not allowed to just get up one month and say, we're adding a Tishrei, right? You're not allowed to do that. And the Gemara tells us that in anti-Semitic times, they actually send coded messages to the Nasi, to the ruler, about adding a month, and they did it in Av, right? And because it was extenuating circumstances. It is okay to discuss it before Rosh Hashanah, but you cannot announce it till after Rosh Hashanah. You cannot make a leap year this year in order to prevent something from happening next year. It has to be all about this year. And you cannot have 3 leap years in a row. And you cannot have a leap year on a Shemitah year, again, right, to not be able to eat produce or farm your land for 2 years in a row would be very difficult. You can do it on the 6th year. It gives people extra time to prepare the land. Okay, there's a machloket if you can leap the year because of tum'ah, because of impurity, right? Meaning, if Adar, people will be impure soon, right? Let's say they know that the Nasi is very sick. And what happened when the Nasi died was that everybody went to the funeral. If everybody goes to the funeral, they all become impure. And if it's too close to Pesach, they'll all be impure before Pesach. And that's a problem. And then the Gemara discusses that Chizkiah did make a leap year because of impurity, right? Everyone was impure, but he actually made a mistake, and then he asked God for mercy. So the Gemara says maybe that was the reason. Maybe it was okay that he made it a leap year, but it was Nisan already. And we know that once it's Nisan, you are not allowed to make a leap year. Or he pushed them off to Pesach Sheni, right, to the next month, and that was the problem. And here the Gemara discusses, we learned a long time ago in Masachet Pesachim that if a majority of the Jewish people are impure, so then they can bring the Korban Pesach at the right time, meaning on Pesach. They could do that even though they are impure. The concept is that we allow impurity if a majority of the Jewish people at the time are impure for Pesach. If it's only the minority, so then those people will do Pesach Sheni. If you remember, that's a month later. And the ones who are pure will do Pesach Rishon. Okay. If you extend the year on the 30th of Adar, meaning the last day of Adar, that is invalid. Or again, it's a machloket, maybe it is valid, right? We learned that you need to start teaching the laws of Pesach 30 days before Pesach, which is Purim. Now, that would be a problem if you start on Purim and then a few days later you extend the year or the month. Or maybe it's only 2 weeks of learning the laws, and then that would be okay. You only make it a leap year if most of Tishrei will be in the summer. Okay, so now we're going to learn that the equinox, right, on hold on, can you still hear me? Yes, okay. The equinox, September 22nd or 23rd, is the sign that we are starting autumn. Okay, so they knew when the equinox was, and the issue is that Sukkot needs to be in the autumn. And okay, so those are the two variables. So now the Gemara says that we make it a leap year if most of Tishrei, of the month of Tishrei, is going to be in the summer, meaning before September 22nd. So the Gemara is, what does that mean, most of Tishrei? At least 16 days of Tishrei. Then you can make it a leap year if that is the case. Or 21 days of Tishrei. Right, so if 21 days of Tishrei come before the equinox, then we're going to make it a leap year. So Daf 13 explains that both opinions are based on the verse that say that Sukkot needs to be in the autumn. So now, what does that mean that it has to be in the autumn? It's a machluket if all of Chol HaMoed Sukkot needs to be in the autumn, therefore it's 16 days, or just some of it, and therefore it's 21 days. Then there's a machloket if the equinox itself, meaning September 22nd, is that the beginning of autumn or the end of summer, right? That's also a machloket. Now we go to Pesach, right? If winter is going to extend into Pesach, we're going to make it a leap year, right? Or if summer is going to extend into Sukkot, that's when we're going to make it a leap year, right? Either 16 days, now there's an opinion of 20 days, and then there's an opinion of 14 days because of the new moon is still growing for the first 14 days. Okay, then we go back to Nisan and we talk about the fact that Nisan needs to be in the spring. And if it's more in the winter, we're going to make a leap year. Okay, that's the end of leap years. Now we're going to talk about smichat zkenim, right? Smicha, okay, we'll discuss. So one of them, the Mishnah talks about needing 3 elders of the Sanhedrin to do smicha. This is leaning on a communal sacrifice. Another opinion is maybe we need 5. And then we discuss another type of smicha, right? Those of you who have heard about a rabbi getting smicha, right? It means ordination. So smicha needs to be done by 3 rabbis, and they give ordination to their student to become a rabbi, and he can now sit in judgment of certain types of cases. The Gemara asks, how do we know that we need 3 judges? We know that Moshe gives Yehoshua smicha, and that's only 1 person. So the Gemara says, you're right, but we still need 3 people. Then the word is smicha, which literally means to like put your hands on, again, on the animal and lean on them. So we ask, does it mean that the rabbis have to lean on the new rabbi? So we say, no, that they don't have to actually put their hands on his head, but they call him rabbi, and then he becomes a type of judge. And then the Gemara says, wait a minute, you say we need 3 people to ordain a rabbi, but we have a very famous story of 1 rabbi giving ordination to rabbis. And this is the story of Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. In the time of Roman persecution, on the top of Daf 14, the Romans said that anybody who gives ordination, smicha, or gets smicha is going to get killed, and any city that it's done in is going to get killed. Basically, everyone's going to get killed. So what did he do? Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba went like in the middle of nowhere, in between 2 cities, so couldn't like implicate any of the people in the cities, and he gave smicha to 5 rabbis. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua. And basically they were, and this is the time of religious persecutions when they're killing all the rabbis, and they become the future of rabbinic Judaism, right? If it wouldn't have been for this story, the Gemara says we would have forgotten certain parts of Jewish law. And these are all Rabbi Kiva's students. But then, so he gives them ordination, but the enemy discovers them and they say, quick, we need to go. And he says, no, you need to escape. Leave me here. I'm old. I can't move. And basically that's what happens. They run because they realize that they need to live. And the Romans kill him. It's like very graphic. It's like 300 iron spears. Actually, when I taught this, someone in my group mentioned, right, because it talks about Charvot Barzel, and that's actually the name of the war right now. But Baruch Hashem, we are the ones who are we are the strong ones, Baruch Hashem, this time. So the Gemara asks, wait a minute, it's one rabbi giving smicha. So the Gemara says, no, really, there were two other rabbis there, but Rabbi Huda ben Baba was so important, they didn't mention the other two rabbis. So it's not a proof that we don't need three rabbis. We have another story of Rabbi Kiva who gave smicha to Rabbi Meir, but people didn't accept it. Therefore, right, Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba gave the smicha again to Rabbi Meir, and it was accepted. Okay, so let's continue about smicha. You cannot give smicha outside of Israel. Again, the smicha that we have today is not the same as the smicha that we have in the time of the Gemara. It was much more official. As we said, you needed 3 judges. It was a very, it was a different type of smicha. If rabbis from Bavel give smicha to someone in Israel, it's not valid, but and the opposite is also not valid. You need to be in the same place, right? So the rabbis have to be in the same place that they're giving smicha to the other rabbi too. Rabbi Yochanan wanted to give smicha to 2 people, but it didn't work out. And then it turns out that they were from the lineage of Eli. Eli was the Kohen in the tabernacle, in the Mishkan, and he was cursed that there won't be an elder in his house. This in general is meant literally, meaning that they're going to die young, but another option is that they can't get smicha, right? They can't become an elder or a rabbi. Rabbi Zera would hide so that he couldn't get smicha out of humility, right? He didn't want a lot of attention, but then he learned that if you become a leader, God forgives you of all your sins. So he said, okay, fine, give me smicha, because everyone can use sins being forgiven. Next, we're going to the next case in the Mishnah, and that is Egla Arufa. We learned this before. This is when you find a dead body outside of a city. You measure which city is the closest, and they have to take responsibility. They take a calf down to this dry riverbed, and they kill the calf, and they say it wasn't our fault. But here you need either 5 or 3 judges. Again, it's a machloket. It's based on a verse. On how many people you need. The Beit Din, the court, has to go out themselves, and they have to go measure which city is closest to the body. Okay, or maybe another opinion is not that you don't need 3 and you don't need 5. You actually need the entire Sanhedrin to come, and a Kohen, and the king. Right? They all have to come because this is such a terrible, idea. Okay. The next thing the Mishnah tells us is appraisals of things that are sanctified need 3 judges. Let's say you separated fruit for Maaser Sheni that you're going to bring up to Jerusalem, and it's starting to go bad, right? Or you have wine that went sour or coins that rusted. You need to get 3 buyers to assess the value, and one of them can even be non-Jewish or the owner. It can be a man and 2 wives if they are financially independent of each other. They can't be all partners. The same thing with hekdesh, something that was sanctified. You assess it with 3 people, or maybe you need 10 people. This is based on the verse. It says the word Kohen 10 times. Therefore, you need 10 people. If you're assessing land, you need 9 people plus 1 Kohen. But for hekdesh, for something a movable object, you only need 3. For erchin is when someone says, I'm going to give the value of this cup to the temple. So then you need 3 people to assess what is the value of that object. And then you don't give the object to the temple, you give the value to the temple. Okay, last daf. Let's say somebody says, I'm going to give my value to the temple, right? Erki alai. My value is going to be to the temple. And then I want to pay in, obviously I'm not being donated to the Beit HaMikdash. So let's say I want to pay with objects. You need 3 people to assess the value of those objects. And if you're going to pay with land, so then you need 10 people to assess the value of the land. Let's say you're redeeming land, right? The land was sanctified. Now you're redeeming it. You need 9 people plus 1 Kohen to assess the land. The same thing if you say, my value is going to go to the temple. Again, we assess the person as if he was a slave on the market, and we see how much you are valued at, and that's the amount of money you have to give to the temple. Let's say a person dedicated his hair to the temple. Obviously, the temple does not need his hair, but he means the value. Is it seen as if it's cut already? And therefore, you only need 3 people because it's seen as a movable object, or it's still attached to the person, and a person needs 10 people to assess the value. Right? The same thing with a person who says, I gave you 10 full, right, vines, right? They were laden with grapes. And then the person says, you only gave me 5. So are they arguing over the land, the vines, which are attached to the land, or the fruits, which is attached to the land, but also is fruit and a movable object, right? So is it right? It's connected to the land, or maybe it's ready to be picked. Therefore, it's seen as a metaltalin, as movable objects. And also because if you leave it on the vine, it's going to spoil, right? But hair, if you leave it on your hair, it's just going to grow. It's going to get longer and better. So maybe it is not the same. Okay, a few more lines. The Gemara now discusses capital cases. Capital punishment needs 23 judges, right, the death of the master is compared to the death of the animal. Hold on, sorry. You need 23 judges for a capital case, whether the defendant is male or female, and whether, let's say, they had relations with an animal, or the animal with them, and therefore, either way, you need 23 judges. The next thing is shor haniskal. This is an ox that is going to be put to death, and you need 23. Right, the ox gets stoned. The master does not. Right, again, if a person kills another person, they get killed. But here, if their ox kills another person, the owner does not get killed. He pays money instead, right? Again, only the killer dies, not if he doesn't die if his animal killed somebody. The animal does die. Okay, then the Mishnah mentions wild animals need to be judged by 23 judges. If they killed somebody, you can actually go out and kill them. You don't have to catch them and bring them to court. Or maybe if they didn't kill anybody yet, but you see a wild bear, so then if he's walking around, you can kill him, because the one opinion is that you cannot domesticate these animals, and because you can't domesticate them, they're seen as dangerous, and therefore you kill and not get killed. Or maybe they can be domesticated, and therefore, if you see them walking around, you don't kill them, right? Unless they cause harm. Okay, Rabbi Kiva adds snakes to the list. There were 5 animals there. Okay, and last thing for today is judging an entire tribe. If an entire tribe does idolatry, so then they get judged by the Sanhedrin, by 71 judges. The same thing, the Gemara says that if it's a whole tribe, it's too many people for a smaller court, and therefore you need a large court of 71 sages. And with that, we are going to stop, and we will pick up next week. If anybody has any questions, we have 5 minutes. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them. Yes.
You better ask Naomi to turn the tape
No,
off.
I leave it on. Actually, someone
Okay.
someone
Okay.
emailed me and asked me to leave it on for questions because she wants to feel part of the
Okay,
class.
fine. How do I get confused with smicha and is a blanket?
Yes, a semicha is a blanket.
But is it the same word?
It is the same word. Yes.
Spelled the same way?
word.
Spelled the same way?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
A blanket is
Yeah.
smicha.
That's what I
Smicha,
thought. I
not
thought they
smicha.
used. What?
נכון? Smicha.
It's a semicha. It's the same word.
I think it's smicha with a A. So, I think.
With a
I'll
what?
look it up, guys. I don't have to get into machlochet here. Okay.
It's the
What,
same word. It's yeah.
I
So
had
I
a question.
see, I see Ilanit is asking the same question that I am about Pilegesh Bigiva, and she's talking about the Shevet Benim. It's the same thing. Was it done by 71 judges, or how was it decided?
We will maybe discuss that next week. So we'll wait. We'll
Jumping the gun.
wait. Cliffhanger for next week. Discussing tribes who do bad things. Yes.
Is
I
there
had a
like
question. I had a question about what Naomi might need to do with the recording. Does she have to do something special with the recording as she's the
No.
host? Okay.
No, she'll stop the
That's-
recording in a minute, and then she just leaves, and I think it gets uploaded. Hopefully, Bezrat Hashem.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Sorry for
Yeah.
interrupting.
Yeah. No.
So,
Thank you so much.
I was just wondering, is there like an underlying principle about the number of judges? It's just if it's more, I know it's obviously if it's more serious, but what about like the other cases in the middle?
Yes. So as we said last week, and we'll continue to be discussing this the whole Masechet, anything that is, I guess you go the other way, right? Anything that involves major, right, major things that involve the entire nation, it's the Sanhedrin, it's 71. Anything that is capital cases, meaning the punishment would be a death in any one of the 4 different ways, which we'll also discuss in this Masachet, then it's 23. Everything else is 3 judges. And as we saw, some people think maybe 5 or 7, but it's everything else is 3 judges.
Yeah.
So that's the way it's broken up, at least.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
in Western law, you cannot testify against yourself. I see a correlation there.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
how Western law.
Exactly, right? Meaning, like in the movies where the person is like, oh no, really, I killed him, and then they arrest him, like it's hard, right? Meaning in Jewish law, if you admit to guilt, we can't use that as testimony against yourself.
Yeah.
If 2 other witnesses come, you can. But if it's just your word, then we do not. It's
So
not
that held
admissible.
on. That held on through all those eons. I thought that was interesting.
Well, not exactly, because we do have concept of confession in Western law. It depends also
Oh,
which Western law. Absolutely, people give confessions all the time to the police.
I know, but that's the
Uh,
police. That's not the court of law.
the police are part of the justice system, yes,
Okay, that's
They
true.
could.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think
and that's
that's
accepted at
it's
the
an
court of law.
exception.
But
It's an
then they
exception
have
with
to
the
prove
original
it. They
case.
can't just go on the confession. There's too many people who are not right in the head.
It's not. It doesn't correlate to the Jewish law. It's a separate. It's a
Oh,
Oh,
separate
they have
evolution.
is it? Okay, okay.
They also have plea deals based on somebody's confessing, et cetera, et cetera. There's
Right.
all kinds of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There
I
is
was gonna
the
say, it sounds
opportunity.
like it sounds like an exception in the first case that we discussed where the man accuses his wife. That's like an exception to that, so that he can't
Correct.
testify against his wife.
Correct.
I guess because that was when they were not, before they were married. I guess it has.
Not yet a full wife. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
But after they get married, he has to say about something that happened before they got married.
Correct.
And
Right.
there's some exceptions regarding theft and that sort of a thing. What happens to you if you will admit it versus deny it? There are consequences either way. So you can actually do one or the other.
Correct. Right. We learned in the Babas, we talked about theft. And if you admit, you don't pay a penalty. Right. And if you admit, right, there are consequences to admission. But as Aliza was saying, when we speak about being in court, you cannot testify against yourself. But you're right that there is the sense of confession. There is a sense of there are penalties or consequences to admitting to certain things, but it depends when they're done and how it's done.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to comment when you said alai, it reminded me of Masechet Nedarim. We said something about that when you're giving a nedava of your own value.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, right? So we have mentioned this before of pledging to donate certain values to the Beit HaMikdash, to the temple. And that was this, exactly. Yep. Okay, excellent. Well, Chanukah Sameach, everyone, on this last night of Chanukah.
Yeah.
And Chodesh Tov to everyone who's still in the daytime. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we will continue our learning next week. So Naomi, if you can click stop recording.